Hi, my name is Brianna Sylver. I am the president and founder of Sylver Consulting, and we're here today to talk about the 5 ways that I cultivate power with leadership at Sylver Consulting. I'm going to share 5 points today, and 2 of them are about things that I do for myself as a leader, and then 3 of them are about things that I cultivate within the team. So 2 things that I do for myself as a leader is I auto-write daily, and then I do an end of the week assessment. On a daily basis, I auto-write or journal in a dialogue with God, and specifically the question that I journal around is, how am I meant to lead like Jesus today? So Jesus is one of the most inclusive people, really an embodiment of that power with energy. The second thing I do is more of a weekly thing. So every Saturday morning, I sit down and I do a reflection about the week before. And I ask myself, what worked really well this week? And then I also ask myself what didn't work so well. And then lastly, I ask myself, what might I do differently next week or in the future as a result of what I know now? On the other hand, there's 3 ways that I cultivate power with energy among my team. The first is I really seek to understand my people as people. Second, I really am committed to leaning into the strengths of each individual person on my team. And then lastly, when I approach delegation, I do it from a perspective of intentional delegation and really around a framework of scaffolding. So one of the ways that we seek to really get to know each of our team members as people is every Monday morning we have a staff meeting. And a key piece, like the lion's share of that meeting, is really just checking in to how was everybody's weekend? How are you coming into the week? What's the energy with which you're coming into the week? So another way that I seek to know my people as people is that when we have the opportunity to come together, I really try to engage in every interaction that we have as a full team with full presence. I'm really trying to be there, take in what's happening, read the room, if you will, from an energy perspective, and as needed, sort of check in with people. Like if something feels a little off, like really kind of check in to say what's up here and what's happening, how can we work through it? Could be something that's happening to them personally, it could be something within the dynamics of the team, and really trying to kind of be ahead of things and be proactive and really just letting people know that they're seen. So it's my belief that every individual has a superpower. We're all here for a reason. I think the reality is that we're good at some things and we're bad at others, and so instead of trying to beat ourselves up about what we aren't, let's really lean into what we are. And so my philosophy as a leader is let's lean into those strengths. Let's lean into what makes people uniquely them as a way of really, building both them up as people, but then of course, leveraging for the maximum potential those strengths on behalf of, our business and, the initiatives of our clients. But then secondarily, we want the team to know one another's strengths as well. We have a good sense of, who's the right person on the team who's going to help us to get this job done in the most effective way possible. And so the way in which I seek to grow individuals who work at Sylver is really through the intentional execution of these stages of delegation. So I think of delegation on a spectrum with 3 key stages. The first stage is really tasks. These are, items that are going to feed into a much broader process or an outcome, and you're really delegating, pieces or chunks of this to other team members. Then the second stage is what I would say you're delegating process. So here, someone on the team is going to take over responsibility for something that's an ongoing function. And then lastly, there is what I call outcome delegation. And so in this case, there's an agreed and aligned upon goal, but there's no definitive process, if you will, or certainly not anything that I am managing that is basically saying, how are you going to go from point A to point B? I'm just expecting you to get to B. And then if there's going to be concerns or issues that need to be addressed, of course, I'm here to answer them and support you in that process, but I am not going to be managing you through that process. I'm just expecting that you achieve that outcome. And so as I have grown as a leader, I've realized, of course, as a growing organization, you cannot be responsible for everything. But at the same time, you can't just sort of go around handing out outcomes without necessarily knowing if people really have the skills to manage those outcomes in a way that's going to be supportive both for our organization and then the work of our clients. So these 5 ways exist because about 6 years ago, I really took a hard reflective look and said, I am not really loving the way in which I am leading this team. And so if I want a different outcome, I need to choose a different way. And so I started with the inner things that I mentioned. I moved then to the outer things. They work together almost like in an infinity loop on a day-to-day basis, really helping to have transformed our culture, which I'm incredibly grateful for. The last thing I would offer you is if you're sitting here and you're thinking, gosh, I don't always like the way I'm leading my own team. What I'll pose to you is that there is a different way. You just have to create what you want that to be, and you're empowered to make that change.